Chapter 11. The Non-Existent. Reyes flew low across the patrons of the market. Some of them ducked as he passed, not because they were scared of a harpy, more likely because they thought he might drop something on their heads. He was less than a third of the way across the market when he thought he heard a voice calling out to him from somewhere behind. It was hard to be certain. Even with his superior hearing, the noise coming from the market below him was so loud that it drowned out nearly everything else. Just in case, he turned in the air and saw Tineggi fast approaching him from behind and trying desperately to attract his attention. "Handsome! Handsome!" Reyes looked blankly at Tineggi for a moment. Then he looked back across the market. Well, there was no point in flying all the way over there if his huntresses had taken a perch somewhere behind him. "We're over here," Tineggi called. She indicated the roof of one of the buildings that neighboured the art shop. "I thought I made it clear to you you were to wait for me over there," Reyes said, a touch of anger in his voice. "What are you doing over here?" "We have our reasons, boss," Tineggi assured him. "Well, it better be a good reason," Reyes insisted. "It is," Tineggi replied calmly. She turned and began to lead the way back to the building in question. Quinagoth was standing at the very edge of the rooftop, staring at the masses of people who were out and about in the market doing their shopping. She barely even bothered to look at Reyes when he landed just behind her. Instead, she seemed to be fixated on something that was happening below. Upon setting foot on the rooftop, Reyes addressed Tineggi. "One other thing, please don't call me handsome." Tineggi seemed a little confused. "I thought that was your name." "No," Reyes replied, "that's Gagara's pet name for me. I'm sorry, but it just doesn't feel right coming from anyone else." "I understand, boss," Tineggi responded. "I'll admit it didn't really sound right. As beautiful as a mother might think her male daughter is, I doubt she would ever call her handsome. Might I ask you what your real name actually is?" "It's Reyes," Reyes told her. He walked to the edge of the building and tried to see what it was that so caught Quinagoth's attention. "Reyes?" Tineggi seemed to be having a little bit of trouble getting her mouth around the word. "I can't imagine many mothers choosing to name their male daughters that either." "Oh?" Reyes commented dryly. "Why? What's wrong with Reyes?" "It's too short, my chief," Quinagoth said without even looking round at him. "Males are supposed to have long, impressive names. Reyes." She shook her head just a little. "You wouldn't even find a huntress with such a short name." Reyes was about to pursue this line of questioning further when it suddenly occurred to him that he was being sidetracked. "So what was so important that the two of you felt it necessary to disobey me and fly to this side of the market?" It was Quinagoth who replied. Still, she didn't look at him. Whatever it was she had her eyes on down in the market apparently struck her as being of extreme importance. "We had little choice, my chief." "Please explain," Reyes pressed. "Why did you have little choice?" "We had to warn you, my chief," Quinagoth stated cryptically. Tineggi walked to the front edge of the shop and beckoned Reyes to join her. "Quinagoth thinks she's recognised the face of one of the girls shopping in the market." "So?" Reyes replied uncertainly. "She's one of the non-existent, my chief," Quinagoth revealed. "Non-existent?" Reyes questioned. "There has never been a girl in our village who went by the name of Incagra, my chief," Quinagoth explained. "Never?" Reyes asked. "Never, my chief," replied Quinagoth. Reyes nodded, looking down at the crowd below. "So, which one isn't she?" Quinagoth almost smirked. Then she indicated one of the harpies in the crowds of the market without actually pointing. "She's the one moving from jewellery table to jewellery table, my chief. She looks like she has a lot of local currency on her." It wasn't easy to be certain exactly who Quinagoth meant. Most of the huntresses in the market seemed to be circulating between the various jewellery stores. The one that Reyes thought Quinagoth meant seemed to be around 10 years old. Most of the huntresses who had left the village when Reyes took over had been between 8 and 12. The one wandering about the market fit neatly in the centre. "Do you see her, my chief?" Quinagoth asked. "I do," Reyes replied. "What about her?" "Lots of girls have left since I took over. Many of them are likely to find their way into cities if they don't hook up with other villages." "No one has left us, my chief," Quinagoth insisted over the top of Reyes. "My point is, what makes Incagra so important?" Reyes asked. Tineggi approached Reyes from behind and rested a hand on his shoulder. "Incagra was with us last night. She was with us when we landed and began to fell the first of the trees. She not only knows where we are, but also where the humans are, what sort of thing protects them, and worst of all, she knows that we've allied ourselves with them." "You mean she could sell us out?" Reyes remarked. "She does seem to have a lot of money, boss," Tineggi commented. "She must have gotten that money from somewhere." Reyes closed his eyes and nodded his head. The young huntress was alone in the market. She was spending money as if she was made of it. Reyes watched as she grabbed the necklace off of one table and placed what looked like a silver coin in its stead. She then put the necklace around her neck and began to check out the rings. The elf behind the stall didn't seem too happy to be serving a harpy, but he seemed more than happy to take her money. If she had sold us out, Reyes suggested, wouldn't she have a couple of elven guards with her, keeping an eye on her, looking after her, and ensuring they knew where she was? I mean, for all they know, she might have sold them some duff information. Quinagoth grinned. Harpies can fly, my chief. Reyes nodded. Even if the elves had been escorting Incagra, she could have lost them easily just by taking to the air. Once she had bought a couple of rings from the stall, Incagra moved back into the hubbub of the market crowd. As she turned, she seemed to notice the 3 harpies perched on the roof of a nearby building. She's seen us, my chief, Quinagoth commented. Is that important? Reyes asked. It depends on whether or not she recognises us, boss, Tineggi offered. Now that Incagra knew the 3 were up there, she continued her shopping unabated. Occasionally she would stop and look up at the 3, tilting her head just slightly to the side and smiling up at those watching her, before continuing with her shopping. We'll have to kill her, my chief, Quinagoth suggested quietly. The racket of the elves pretty much guaranteed that her comment wouldn't reach Incagra. Reyes nodded grimly. He glanced at the sky immediately over the market, and the bluish magical glow told him that there was an eye in the sky almost immediately overhead, drifting slowly towards the market. Reyes watched the eye for a moment before he replied to the huntress. Not yet. But Quinagoth started to protest. Not with so many witnesses, Reyes insisted. Quinagoth nodded sagely and continued to keep her attention pinned on the market below them. Reyes stepped away from the edge of the roof. A few steps, and he was effectively hidden from the view of the shoppers in the market. Towards the back of the shop he sat down in a relatively flat part of the roof. As he did so, he commented, Before we do anything, I think I should warn Mangloss of what's happening. He might have some advice for us. Quinagoth didn't sound amused. We don't need Mangloss's help, my chief. By the time we've flown back to the encampment and given him our report, Incagra could be long gone. We should deal with her ourselves. We will, Reyes assured her. We're not going anywhere, just continue to keep an eye on her. I'll contact Mangloss. I need to warn him in case the elves are already on their way. As he spoke, he pulled the scrying crystal out from the hammerstone and held it gently in the palm of his right hand. He felt nervous doing so. There was an eye dangerously close overhead. What if it should see what he was doing? What if it should recognise the scrying crystal for what it was? The best thing he could do to prevent that was to hold the crystal in front of him or try to use his own body to block the line of sight from the nearest eye. Mangloss, without even having to think about it, his thoughts automatically switched to Flourish. Mangloss, are you there? There was something wrong. It felt as if he was pushing against a thick rubber wall that stretched but refused to let his mind escape, except as tiny pinpricks of effort. It was tiring. A couple of minutes passed, nothing happened, and then... Reyes? Is that you? The voice was strained. It was hardly recognisable as Mangloss. It is I, Reyes told him. You are still in Goldspawn, aren't you? Mangloss commented. I can tell. Staying in contact is an effort. Why is it so hard to communicate? It was really a stray thought that Reyes didn't expect an answer to. There were more important things on his mind. Goldspawn is covered by an anti-scrying shield. A normal scry spell would have had no effect. Our crystals have a slight advantage in that the power is more focused at one part of the shield. The scrying ball effectively punches a hole through the shield, but the shield repairs itself quickly, so each new thought has to punch through the shield anew. I understand, Reyes thought back. He wanted to get this over with quickly. In the few seconds he had been speaking to Mangloss, he was already feeling the pressure of trying to communicate this way. He felt tired, and his head was threatening with the first hints of pain. I assume you're letting me know that you have the canvas, and are on your way back already. Not yet, Reyes replied. Reyes's thoughts were beginning to feel a little weak. Not yet, Mangloss repeated. Did you say not yet? I did, Reyes thought back, trying to keep his thoughts as clear as possible. I don't have the canvas. I'm getting closer, though. I have a lead on a place where I can find the item you're looking for, so long as I wasn't being lied to. So why are you calling? Mangloss sounded a little impatient. Reyes swallowed deeply. The pain in his head was getting steadily worse. It was getting to be more and more of an effort to communicate this way. There's a danger we might have been sold out. What? Mangloss replied. Try to think clearer. You're barely getting through as it is. I didn't catch your last comment. Reyes closed his eyes and tried to concentrate on his thoughts. Closing his eyes also helped blot out the sunlight, which, if anything, was only serving to make his headache all the worse. It didn't help that he was feeling quite hesitant about telling Mangloss what he and his huntresses had encountered. He was the one who had brought the harpies to the encampment in the first place. If one of his girls had sold the location of the encampment to the elves, if the humans were to be massacred because the elves found them, it would all come down to being his fault. He took a deep breath, bracing himself, and then as clearly as he could manage, he replied, "There's a danger that the encampment might have been sold out by one of the girls from my village. She was with us last night, even after we began to build our new village. Now, she seems to be wandering about Goldspawn with a lot of money on her belt. It's possible we're already too late." "Right," Mangloss replied. He didn't sound angry, but he did go silent for a minute or two. Eventually the silence began to get to Reyes. "Mangloss? Mangloss, are you still there?" Mangloss's voice suddenly came through loud and strong. "Have you seen any kind of military build-up in the city? Anything that might indicate an army preparing to march out of the city? Anything at all?" I don't think so," Reyes replied. "We haven't really been here all that long, and we haven't had a chance to have a good look around the city. I will say I've seen very few soldiers of any kind in the streets. I suppose they could be gathering somewhere." "What about your flight to Goldspawn?" Mangloss asked. "Did you see a vast army making its way south towards the old ruined castle?" "No," Reyes admitted, "but we weren't exactly checking the entire countryside looking for them." "Nevertheless," Mangloss commented, "you can see quite a distance when you're airborne. It would be hard for you to have missed such an army, even if it was moving through the thickest forest." "You think it's safe, then?" Reyes asked uncertainly. "You think she might be innocent?" "Could be," Mangloss replied. "But can we take the chance?" "I'll see what I can do on this end. I'll call Greyforth back from his hunting trip, and I'll try to cover your village with the same kind of illusory shield that currently covers our encampment. It shouldn't be too difficult. It's a lot smaller than the encampment, and the shield only really needs to be temporary until we're sure the coast is clear." "You should probably let the king know as well," Reyes suggested. Grief, that last thought sent the pain straight through the centre of his head. He felt for a minute as if he'd been struck by a red-hot needle. "I will," Mangloss replied. "Oh," Reyes wanted to stop the communication there. He was worried how much pain one more comment might make, but he felt it was an important enough thought to be worth the pain. "Please make sure Greyforth is aware that the harpies camped on your doorstep are friendly. I'd hate to come home to find out my village has been slaughtered." "I will," Mangloss replied. Reyes could take no more. His head was beginning to feel as if it was trying to rip itself apart from the top of his forehead down. He could feel one of his veins throbbing away in a painful rhythm. He didn't even feel up to bidding Mangloss goodbye. Reyes broke the connection, and a great surge of relief seemed to hit him, and even made him feel a little dizzy. It seemed that just holding the line open to Mangloss had contributed to the pain he was now feeling. His head still felt as if it wanted to explode, but he also felt as if a great pressure had been lifted off him. Reyes fought the scrying crystal back into the hammerstone, and climbed awkwardly back to his feet. Quinagoth and Tineggi were still perched on the very edge of the shop's roof. With them was a third harpy. Encagra had landed neatly between them, and was trying to engage the pair of them in conversation. "It's good to see some familiar faces." "You know us?" Tineggi questioned. And there was a sense of coldness about the way she spoke, an attitude that Encagra evidently didn't pick up on. "I know both of you," Encagra said. "I'm afraid I don't recognise your sister, though. I know you might not recognise me, since we rarely hunted together. Nevertheless, it's good to see a familiar face around here. Maybe we could travel together for a while." "You're alone, then?" Tineggi asked, tilting her head just slightly to the side. "I was," Encagra replied. "I'd like to think that I'm not now." Reyes was feeling very tired and still quite dizzy. Tineggi seemed to be doing all the talking. It was as if she was trying to keep Encagra's attention fully on herself, so that the traitor wouldn't see what Quinagoth was up to behind her. Quinagoth moved slowly, trying to make as little noise as possible. She released her dart thrower from where it hung by her side, and she pulled a dart from her quiver and slowly pulled the string back. It took Reyes a lot longer than it should have to realise what his bodyguard was doing. He began to advance quickly across the rooftop, struggling to shout out a single word "no" because of the pain such an utterance caused him. Encagra seemed to realise something was happening behind her back. She turned her head to face Reyes, and then began to turn round towards Quinagoth. "Traitor!" Quinagoth shouted. She fired the dart. Her missile struck Encagra just below her throat, in the very centre of her chest. Inkagra looked down at the dot as if she couldn't believe it was there. Then she slumped forward, trying to hold to what little life still remained in her. For a moment, Reyes felt helpless. He could heal the young huntress, give her back her life, if he could get to her quickly enough. But his legs didn't seem to want to cooperate, nor did he really feel capable of casting a spell right at the moment. He was also uncertain that he should save the huntress's life when she might already have sold out her sisters. Reyes reached Inkagra. He settled down beside her and checked for any sign the huntress was still alive. She was. "What are you doing?" Tineggi asked. Reyes braced himself to cast a heal spell. If he could save Inkagra's life, maybe she would reveal what, if anything, she had told the elves. Maybe he could even convince her to rejoin the village. He rested his hands on the shaft of the dart and prepared to pull it free. Before he was able to do anything, Reyes caught sight of the blue glow of something large hovering immediately overhead, and suddenly everything seemed to go dark.